are talking The Beyond, or at least this is one of the names from this 1981 Lucio Fulci classic movie. I haven't seen this for a long time. I barely remember it, to be honest, and just rewatched it for this review. Let's discuss about the movie. So this is part of his kind of like loosely affiliated trilogy, and effectively is about the gates of hell. So we have this woman who inherits a hotel, a rundown, dilapidated hotel, I believe it's Louisiana, and she goes there with the intention of starting a business. But the hotel is in a state of disrepair for one, but more alarmingly, there seems to be a lot of deaths associated with this hotel. Possibly, and she doesn't know this at the beginning of course, is that this hotel is actually situated on one of these 7 gates of hell, and its influence is kind of spreading out through a series of events. She comes across a variety of characters, including a doctor played by David Warbeck, a blind girl with a dog who sort of gives her vague warnings, and ultimately the gates of hell may swing open. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So for many, this is considered Fulci's kind of best movie for at least some of his fans. As I said, it's a movie that I don't really remember until I had this rewatch. Let's talk about what I think works in this movie's favour. I mean, this movie is synonymous with the stylings of Fulci. I mean, his kind of like camera work and stylistic choices are there, you know, all on display. I mean, the way, for example, he'll film like a zombie from the kind of directly in front, and the zombie's kind of walking towards the camera slowly, going, "Arr!" And then we have like the reaction shot from the victim and things like that. So there's all those kind of like stylistic choices that you would have seen in other Fulci films are obviously on display on this one. It's notable for having some quite gory scenes. Now, this is a 1981 movie, so we do have to kind of like factor in that obviously it's an older film now and the effects don't look quite as shocking as they might have done back in the early 80s and things like that. But nonetheless, there is still a good amount of gore on display here, including spiders crawling in people's mouths and biting their tongues and their eyes, and dogs ripping out people's throats, various kind of headshots and stuff like that. So there's plenty of obviously practical effects here, and there's lots of gooey grossness, blood and other kind of like fluids that are running towards you and stuff like that. I think the movie's biggest plus though is just this feeling of like dread that it manages to kind of like encapsulate, because you know we have this door to hell, and it establishes it relatively early on, so it's not like a spoiler really, and we just know that there's some sort of evil presence that is emanating from this area, and it's affecting those around it in sort of different ways and stuff. And it's just this feeling of an unstoppable sort of evil force, which is just penetrating kind of humanity, and and what it's doing to him, and ends up having some pretty sort of, as I say, gruesome consequences for those who kind of come across his path and things like that. I gotta say, I could have still quite liked the kind of the makeup and stuff, even though obviously, it's looking a little dated, but obviously you have to judge it at the time that it was made. I think there's some great kind of practical kind of VFX on display here. Actually, it's considered an Italian movie, but it was actually financed by a German production company. So technically speaking, this is actually a German movie, believe it or not. But anyway, so there was some behind the scenes drama with this one, but I think that nonetheless, it still has those classic kind of Fulci sort of hallmarks that people will enjoy. I think we have a fairly kind of good leading couple here. Sort of protagonists here who sort of seem bewildered and confused all of the time, and are totally out of their depth. and as the film progresses, we do get a sense of the sort of the supernatural gaining kind of traction over this kind of over humanity and what will happen. So I think the movie really succeeds in this atmosphere and this kind of this feeling of oppression and dread that's coming from this evil force. What doesn't work, I mean, a lot of Fulci films are criticised for being somewhat kind of incomprehensible in regards to plot. And I think although you can kind of get the basic sort of gist of the story okay, it's true of this. And there are things here that seemingly are, you know, don't make the most sense, and it seems a little bit goofy at times. And that's, you know, a lot of Fulci movies are really accused of this, to be honest. I think sometimes Fulci apologists just going to brush over this, but you have to kind of address it. I don't think the acting is the best, if I'm honest, with this one. There are some kind of like, again, ropier performances. You know, we are talking about a 1981 movie. I don't think, even though I think this story has some elements that are very good, but also a little bit mixed, generally speaking, I think this, for me at least, I don't think the story is as memorable as other Fulci movies. I just don't think it's quite, for me at least, it's not as classic as other people might imagine. I think it ends up being a little bit kind of somewhat forgettable, if I'm honest, in regards to the story elements. And I think it has a sort of thing where it kind of repeats the same beats. Oh look, there's a bunch of people that are associated with this kind of building, or our lead characters, and they'll get like knocked off in one way or another, and we just kind of watch the scene of that person getting killed, that person getting killed, that person getting killed. It's like, okay, you know, it seems to kind of repeat the same beat to the story, and yeah, it's fun visually, there's lots of kind of gooey effects, but you don't really feel like the movie has a huge amount of forward momentum in kind of story, and it's just kind of like somewhat spinning its wheels and ends up having these kind of random effects. There's also lots of things here that just seem to be like a little bit goofy. You know, we'll have someone's falls over in a morgue, and a vat of acid just happens to drop on their face and things like this, but you know, it's a little bit sort of like goofy at times, as I've said. Now again, if you're judging it by today's standards, these VFX do look of their time and maybe wouldn't be considered particularly sort of cutting edge, shall we say, at this time. But yeah, you know, again, you can't really judge it too harshly, because we are talking about a 1981 movie at the end of the day. I think this movie sometimes is just a little bit vague about its some plot points in regards to the causes and things like this, about what's actually kind of going on. It just wants to have it's more interested in having like an atmosphere than a kind of an actual solid narrative at the end of the day. Overall, I think this movie is a fun movie. I think it has its moments of brilliance, and Fulci's direction, I think, shines through in those sequences, and it certainly has an eerie atmosphere. But I don't think it's as classic as some of the other Fulci movies. And dare I say, I actually have to say, I think overall this movie is certainly, you know, not a bad film by any stretch of the imagination, but it is somewhat middling. For me, and this might be controversial, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. And that's still an above average mark, the way I kind of score these things. But I personally don't feel it really kind of stands up as one of the horror greats, if I'm honest. So yeah, 6 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.